Hey everyone, this is Everest with the Arcade Stick, and some time ago I had the pleasure of reviewing the Haute42, now Cosmox Gaming T16, G16, and mini board. And at the very end, I snuck in this little guy. And yeah, I know it's covered in stickers. I didn't imagine I was going to be reviewing this, but here we are. Well, anyway, this is the M16, and it is probably one of their premium controllers in that it's pretty much all metal with a little bit of acrylic on the inside. And yeah, it has that serious weight and it just feels so nice. Well, Haute42 was really kind enough to send over the M16 Plus. And yeah, so if you want the big boy version, here it is. Again, both these controllers are GP2040 powered, LEDs, status screen, all those standard Cosmox features. So I'm going to be going over the overviews, the internals, all that other good stuff I do in these reviews. So if you've been eyeing the M series, and you're not sure, hey, is the regular M16 or M series for me, or is the M Plus for me? I'm going to try and help you answer that, and also maybe compare it to a few of the other Cosmox offerings out there. So let's get started. Let's perform an overview of the M16. Now it does come with a fully printed manual sheet. I've got it all folded up there. You do have a USB A to C cable and a few other little accessories. So you've got the really crappy switch puller, to be honest, an extra switch, which is nice, and a couple extra rubber nubs. So if they come off your option buttons, you lose them. At least you have a couple spares. Let's take a look at the controller itself. Now the M16 is really just short for metal body and 16 buttons. Obviously, we're not counting the option buttons, just the 16 main face buttons. So you do have a lot of extras. You get your L3 and L3. You can map these differently if you like, and this is your R3. Of course, in GP2040, you can remap practically anything. Anyhow, just like other Haute42 controllers, we have a status screen built in. Got a nice status LED. I believe you can change this to the turbo LED in the back end if you like. But otherwise it just shows you're on. I'm just plugging in the power, so that's probably why it's going. I don't know what system you're really connecting me to. Anyhow, 7 option buttons, so you have L3, R3, start cyclone, and there's a turbo in there somewhere. Obviously we're not labeled, and again, because it's GP2040, I don't mind so much, just because, well, you can remap them the way you like. I do know this is select and this is start, so this is important for getting into web config mode. Just remember that by default. Otherwise, these do come with those stock Kalich red switches, and I've replaced most of these with the low-free Phantoms, and I believe I have some Ghosts in here as well because I was testing that. So I know these are the stock reds right through here. I plan to eventually get some clickies, but I've been waiting over a month for those switches as of this recording, so we'll get that in later. Anyhow, let's go ahead and look at the other sides. Okay, let's take a look. Now it has this nice beveled front edge, which I think looks nice, feels good. If I wanted, I guess I could slip in a few other stickers there, but I haven't. Nothing really too interesting on these sides, but on the back, you do have, of course, USB-C and the USB-A pass-through port. So if you have a Magic Boots adapter at Wingman FGC, you can go ahead and plug that in here. And on the back, I know it looks bad. I put on some grip tape, so it just makes it easier for me to carry it. Otherwise, you're trying to grip bare metal, which on this, because it's got a nice weight, it's not horrible, but there you go. I did make cutouts for the screws here. And there are some retaining screws under these pads, so I'm not really going to get into too much on internals here. I don't want to tear up my personal unit too much. So sorry about that, but really, it's again kind of that sandwich mentality. You can see there's a metal layer here, an acrylic layer in there, and another thin metal layer here. So yeah, it's just going to be basically metal layer, PCB layer, acrylic layer, and that. Now, there are no LEDs around the sides, so you are a fan of, say, the Razer Kitsune, and you're wondering, is this as good, is it better in the RGB department? Probably not. It's just, a single LED under each of these, and there you go. So it does the job, I feel. Anyhow, that's pretty much a quick look over of the M16. So let me compare it to a couple others and we'll move on. Just to give it a quick size comparison between some of the other Haute42 models, here's the T16, so it's the largest in the group. And then if that's large, this is the medium. As you can see, let's just do a corner kind of size comparison. So it's got quite a bit more width on it. Not too much more height, but there you go. And then the G16, obviously I've customized these. So let's try and get this just so you can see how they get bigger. This guy, still the portability king, obviously, because it's so small. And yes, I've customized all of them by now. But M16, I feel like it's a really great balance of size. Is it too large, not too large to take around? Now, obviously, all of these, they're pretty slim. They're very equally pretty portable, but say if you're going in a really cramped, tight environment, like you want to play on the airplane for some reason, then something like the G16 is your choice. Whereas the T16, yeah, you could do it, but it's not as pleasant. So it's just something to take in consideration. M16 medium, you're going to fit that in maybe more situations. And when you're playing just at home, if you're looking at only one of these controllers, then it's equally portable. So you have that balance. Let's take some measurements on the M16. So side to side, we are looking at just shy of 9.5 inches or so, and it's a healthy 240 millimeters-ish. So vertically, we're looking at just about 6.5 inches, or about 165 millimeters. Now, for width, let's take out the calipers, and in a section where we're just metal to metal, front to back, we're just shy of 1/2 inch. So 0.4840, and if we include the button height, and it's a little bit more. Let's try not to press it. I'd say it's 0.6550, or 16.66 millimeters. Let's get a weight on the M16. 1 pound, 14.4 ounces. So, yeah, it has a presence, but it's not overbearing. Let's do a little bit of the internals for the M16. Now, I'm not going to take this completely apart because I'll be doing that with the M Plus series later on the video. So I will show you, if you peel off the cap here, you have that kind of standard button. And if you take off the cap and switch, you have that standard Haute42 socket here with the Chalk V2 and a single LED. I'm hoping in the future maybe we can get double LEDs for a little bit more illumination, especially when you have the opaque caps. Obviously, I don't have that problem. And also, it just gives you more even light distribution. I understand why they go with a single, just because it is cheaper. There is that consideration. It's time for some basic acceptance on the M. Now, that's going to start with some slide and pressure testing, so I just like making sure we're not getting a lot of bending or depressions. And of course, yeah, I didn't expect that to happen at all. It's very solid, and if I try and pick it up and flex it, nope, not happening. So definitely quite durable that way. Let's try some slide testing. And it does take a little bit of effort to move this guy around, so that's acceptable. Let's go ahead and take away the foam, and I'll definitely have a better time. Yeah, see, definitely have to press a lot harder to get that to move, so that's good. I want to do some just noise testing. Now, I do have my own custom switches loaded, which I've been using for a while. Again, I'm using the Low Free Shadow series. This is the Wizard series, so that's clicky, obviously. There's my linears, there's my tactiles, and I have crystals in here, so that's pretty similar to the stock V2 reds. So let's give them a whirl. Something new for 2025 is I'm doing input lag testing, so you know just how fast these guys can be. Alright, I'm using a GPDL device here, just an Arduino Nano, and it runs the GPDL program. Already tested it, so here's the results. Now, latency here is between 1 and 3 on the chart, but really what you're looking for is down here. This is in X input mode. Minimum latency was 1.13 milliseconds, while the average was 1.43, and the maximum is 2.79. It's kind of what I've seen in a lot of GP2040s that I've tested so far. Polling rate I can't get because you need a analog control for that, and well, there's none here. Anyway, this was done on a Windows 11 box, latest firmware, and yeah, this is pretty good performance, and it's kind of what I expect from GP2040. Let's do some quick in-game footage with the M16 now. Things feel pretty crisp and nice. Now, because of the reduced size of the M16, I am finding my hands are kind of off the controller itself while I'm playing most of the time, or they're kind of on that ridge, which is fine. It's just, you kind of get used to it. And I'm playing standing up right now. In the lap, I feel that it's a little less prevalent, so there is that. But if you're playing on a table like I am, so clearly I can get the Dragon Punch out there when I need it. At least to that side. It's always a problem for me to get it on this side. Anyway. So clearly I can pull off moves. With these caps, you've got a little bit of texture to them, not a lot. Default caps are just fine too. And the nice thing on the M and M Plus is that slides for when you need a tech hit, really easy, really smooth. So there's that. As far as extra buttons, you can pretty easily reach this guy with your left thumb and this guy with your right thumb, and you just might have to take a slight detour to reach up here. And if you're playing WASD, it should be pretty intuitive using that until you're ready to get on hitbox if that's your situation. But otherwise, yeah, that plays pretty well despite my faults in not being able to hit things when I want to. So there we go, finally hit it. Right, otherwise, I feel most of the time in game it's just fine. I'm not worried about like falling off the sides here. And slides work. Your hands end up down here, but that's fine. If you really want it on the controller itself, then you probably want to look at the M Plus or something bigger, Otherwise, plays pretty well. Next up, let's do a quick Steam Deck check on the M16, the smaller of the M series. And just like most any GP2040 controller, it works in Steam Deck OS. So just to show that off, I'm going to move around the OS a little bit. And yeah, you can see, definitely works. I do recommend you set up in X input mode. D input works as well, but X input just seems more reliable to me, and that may be my paranoia, but it works. So there we go. Anyhow, I'm going to start the game just so we can show that it works in-game, but also I like to show this off in an ultra compact way. So I'm using a right angle cable, and I have that plugged into a little USB hub that has USB-A and power delivery. I do that just because a lot of the cables that ship are A to C, but I can tell you C to C works fine. Anyway, and in the ultra compact setup, I'm thinking, what if you really need to play on an airline tray or something crazy thing like that? The width is limited by the Steam Deck. That's about 11.5 inches or about 290 millimeters. Now the depth is about 10 inches or about 254-ish millimeters. So just be mindful of that if you have a cramped environment you want to play in. Anyhow, let's go ahead and get launched. And just to show you, as you can see already, the button on the launch of the game, it is working, and again, it does play. Not too surprised, GP2040 just works, so there you go. Finally, for the lab, like doing a quick web review just to make sure there's no misleading claims or the support isn't good, etc. So let's try searching for Haute42 M16. And we get to Haute42 here, but specifically for the M16, I'm not seeing it on the first page of results, which I think is pretty essential. So let's try going to Haute42 itself, and you get this now. So it's a little mixed bag. Now I'll show you the correct way, and I'm going to show you they haven't quite merged or transferred over the stuff to the Cosmox label, which I wish they would. Anyway, if you go to the Haute42 section, you're now told this is a different brand. We're supporting the other brands. But if you go under product for now, you can still get to the M series, T series, etc. So it's here. Now what's here? Is it anything wrong? Nah, I mean, it looks good. I don't really have a lot of objections. There's this thing I'm going to nitpick here. Again, like most Cosmox and a lot of other GP2040 controllers, they'll say, hey, we're PlayStation 4 compatible. That's kind of true. You can either do the forbidden jutsu method of, putting in the key files, or you have the authenticator device like the Booter 5 or the Magic Boots, and then it will work. So natively by itself, not going to work, but otherwise, with those things, it will. Okay, so everything else is pretty decent. I'm not going to complain. If we go into support, you have how to update. I do wish there were screenshots or a video or something like that showing how to do it. I know there are videos on YouTube. I've made one, but still, it'd be nice to have it right here. There's an assortment of FAQs. This is not horrible. I would like to see how do I change SOCD mode. Well, here's input mode at least, but SOCD mode is not here. So it could be a little bit better, but it's not terrible. It'd be nice to have just a link to, say, the GP2040 info site. Okay, so what happens if I instead search for Cosmox M16? We get a lot of product pages, but we don't really get the main. So yeah, if you came here and thought, oh, this is a Cosmox product now, and I think in the future it will be listed here. It's going to open this, and while you will find the M Plus series, you are not going to find the M series. So that's still under this product listing here. So yeah, you can't just find it at the moment. I think this will be fixed. I'm hoping it will be fixed. Now that I'm back from the lab, let's talk about what I liked, what we can improve upon, and some mids on the M16. And I'm going to say it right up front. You guys know I really like this controller. Day one when it was announced, I actually ordered it. It was just, yeah, I like their other stuff. This is good. And I ordered it on my own. So that's saying something. And as we go into these pros and cons, I hope you're going to get a sense of why I did that. So let's get started. Let's go into the first area, which is features and performance. Now, of course, this is Haute42, so we're running the GP2040 firmware, and it runs really fast. And of course, you have the compatibility with various adapters to make it PS5 or Xbox compatible. Those do incur additional cost, but at least the option is there. Anyway, this almost has kind of a standard suite now of Haute42 features. So you start with, the status screen here, which is really nice for just telling, yeah, my inputs are there. And again, we don't have the specific placement of the buttons on this version. I believe there's a custom version that does do it. Though in, I think, a newer version of the firmware coming, it may have more layouts that you can do. So we'll have to see where the future is there. It's really just a coding issue at the current time. So, if you want it to show exactly the layout that's, on here, you sort of can, but, Anyway, another feature, of course, is the extra 4 buttons here. So above and beyond the standard 12, you have an extra up, which currently lights this up, and it's kind of a limitation of GP2040, but I'm sure that'll be fixed in the future. And then you have 2 L3s and an R3. Of course, you can reprogram any of these in the back end. So if you want this to be function or something else, you can do that. So yeah. Something that this has that the T16, the G16 did not is 7 full option buttons, which makes me really happy. Now, keeping track of what they do is sometimes a challenge for old me, but, you know, I'll make do. I know I've kind of memorized that these are start and select. I think these two are L3, R3, so yeah. If you don't like the order, you can, of course, change it. Now, something that wasn't included, and maybe this goes more in build, is that the key caps for the little option buttons in the T16, the G16, they had black and red option ones if you wanted those, but in this you only get clear. So it's a little thing. Anyway, what else is good? You have the pass-through port, which again, you know, if you have that adapter, that Magic S Ultimate, the Wingman FGC, the Magic Boots, etc., the Mag 1, you know, you get compatibility for those systems really easily, really quickly, and you know, you're pretty set. It does come pre-configured to use that port, so you don't have to go in the back end to set that up, which is really nice. You just may have to, you know, remember, okay, if I want PS5 compatibility, I gotta hold this on startup. That's all. So right now I'm on X input, so yeah, I'd have to toggle that if I want to play on a PS5. Other than that, yeah, we've got a great feature set here already. RGB, extra buttons, pass-through port, 7 full option buttons, really fast performance. I don't have a problem there. Now before I move on, there is one little drawback that I don't know if it's a negative or if it's a mid. It really depends on how high level you are. 99% of people I feel this won't affect, but obviously because you have L3 and R3 here, and you have then multiples, you can't be CPT legal with this. Other games like Guilty Gear, etc., they don't care as much. But yeah, CPT, this wouldn't be legal. You would have to remove pretty much all 4 of these, which isn't impossible. You just have these holes in there, and I think someone's tried to make some like 3D printed solutions that'll, you know, plug into these, and you can put a button cap or just blank cap or something like that on there, so it doesn't look like you have empty holes. But so again, I feel like it's a really minor drawback. It's something, you know, getting into this, that yeah, this is not going to be CPT legal. For the few people of you that, you know, care about that, you might want to look elsewhere. Now that features and performance are over with, let's talk about build quality. And yeah, it's pretty good. Kind of already mentioned it, but I mean, the all-metal body here feels really solid, gives it a lot of heft. You've seen the pressure test. It does not give at all, so that's great. And because of the, you know, little pads on the bottom, it doesn't slide much at all. So that's a really good combination right there. Now, do I have any complaints about the build quality? Not especially, not really. Now, yeah, there's RGB on the buttons. Some might complain, you know, there's not enough RGB on it, especially with some of the darker color caps that are coming by default. You don't get a lot of RGB transmission, especially like the black caps. I originally had the silver caps, but I wasn't really happy with, you know, how little light got through them. So I changed to these, and I like the matte feel on these anyway, so it's kind of a win-win. These are a tiny, tiny bit smaller than the stock caps, but to me that doesn't matter. To you, maybe. So yeah. Now, a wish list item though, you know, you have the RGB on these, but there's no surround underglow RGB that some of you folks might want to have. That's just not integrated in this. Maybe it's a future model or future revision can have it. To me, it's not the biggest loss, but if that's something you're dead set on, well, there are, you know, there that have that. Anyway, as far as the build, other items that I like, 7 option buttons is great. Of course, you know, if you are playing CPT, that means because you have an L3 and R3 that if you don't reprogram anyway, you can turn them off and then show, yeah, these don't do anything. You still might have to pull off some of these or reprogram them somehow. But that affects a very small minority of people, I feel. Anyway. One other touch that I liked is, just like the T16 and G16, you have the little boot cell pass-through pin button there, so I could use a little paper clip, push that down, power it on, and if I've screwed up my firmware, really want to reflash it, there I go. I don't have to open this up, which I don't really want to have to do, especially because to open it up, I have to peel off these pads, and I don't want to do that at all. Because I just worry that they won't be sticky anymore. And while I do have adhesive promoter at home because I'm a big nerd, I guess, I don't have to fuss with Q-tips, putting that back on, praying it works, and then hoping I can take it off the next time if I need. I just don't have to deal with that. So I feel like it could be a little bit nicer design if we just put the screws that are under here, like here, 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 and here. That way it's just easier to remove if and when you need to. Often, you really don't. I haven't even disassembled this once, whereas most controllers, I'll end up doing it at least once to show you, but with them being under here, I don't want it. Alright, build quality I thought was pretty good, but what about customization? And this is an area that, for obvious reasons, why the M16 may not be the most customizable, so if you really like your own artwork, etc., you may not like this as much, right? So obviously I got different colored caps. You can shop those on AliExpress, and there are vendors that will do just one cap in a certain color. So I just got a few of the red, orange, and yellow, and then I just got a set of the black type and the clear type. So it doesn't cost a lot generally to get that. I feel like it costs more in shipping than it should, but there you go. Stickers, obviously you can see that's a viable alternative to having full-on faceplate of art. Usually this is the point where I recommend our art services at the arcade stick, but as we have no cover for it, it's a little hard. But I have seen people do vinyl wraps of some sort, so you really have to carefully lay it on. I don't feel like my old fingers have that level of dexterity to really accurately get it. I just see a little bit of metal. I'm like, I don't need to fix it. I do need to fix it. That's just me. So yeah, you can obviously configure your own custom RGB theme in GP2040. And you can customize what the start screen does on startup. So let's just show you what I got. There you go. And I started a thread on Haute42's Discord for people to post their own splash screens and request their own, and that thread has gone on pretty dang long. I was surprised. Yay, go me. Anyway, but I will say on the positive side, no acrylic means no acrylic smudges. Something else with customization, and this is more the performance-minded customization, is yes, I've already mentioned it. I only have 4 of the OEM switches in here right now, and I'm planning on changing that to be clicky once they arrive. It's only been a month, guys. But I do have the low free switches in here. I believe these are the linears and these are the tactiles. So you do have that option, but of course this is that low profile quandary where if you want the customization, there's pretty much not a lot of options compared to, say, what you can get on the G16, because there's 1,000,001 MX switches out there. Low profile you can't. There's just only so many options. However, I have found the low free options, the Phantom and the Ghost. I'm still waiting to try the Wizard. They've been excellent, so they are a really nice upgrade. I have an entire video on what I thought of at least the Phantom and the Ghost. One little wish list item for customization is it'd be nice if there was a foam pad that could be bolted on the bottom and removed easily. I've noticed a couple people have been offering that for the T16 and I think the S16. So that's kind of a little Discord buy sort of thing. It'd be better to have something more professional, right? And something that was just a little bit soft, but of course stood up. It'd be nice to have as an option. Okay, you might think we're a little beaten, a little bruised at their customization segment. I still think this is an excellent controller. Even, it's not the most customizable, not the most fun to make pretty. However, what about size and portability? Well, I've kind of said it before, this guy is an excellent choice for portability. It would be nice if we had the G16 side port on here, because with this, I can put it right up against the Steam Deck for a really cramped situation, whereas on here, it's going to stick out. I can use angle adapters somewhat, but, Anyway, the nice thing I can report is one of my favorite sleeves will fit this guy perfectly. So let's go ahead and demo that, just so you can see. Perfectly inserted with room for even, I might be able to squeeze in a cable or at least an adapter in here, no problem. Now, is there anything in the portability or size to consider? I mean, this is the medium in the group. You've seen that before. Obviously, I feel like the T16, if you are playing on the lap just a lot, then it'd probably be more comfortable than this over time. But is it a huge difference? It's kind of hard to tell. I really haven't had that much problem playing the lap with this guy, but I will say T16 size is definitely more lap comfortable. I just don't even have to think. I can just zone out, put it there, play, and there we go. Let's wrap things up by talking about value. Now again, value is what I just consider a ratio of what you're getting for what you're paying, right? And Haute42 notoriously has been a really value brand. Not to say their performance is bad, but it's just you get a lot of features for not a lot of money. And yes, the M series is their most expensive item right now. I believe the M Pro will come out. It'll probably be more expensive, let's just say. However, are you still getting a good value for, the 102, 110, let's say, that you're going to be paying for it? And I still feel that, yeah, you are getting a really great controller for that amount of money. Yes, the features here are pretty much the same as the, say, T16 or G16 or S16. It's just in that medium-sized form factor, and of course you're getting an all-metal body, which, feels really great, and, etc. I've already talked about what I liked about the build. So I still feel that, in comparison to other controllers at this price point, you're getting a lot, which is, still a steal for a lot of gamers out there right now. Now, if you still don't want to spend that amount of money, I totally understand. They still have great options under the $100 mark, so don't feel bad if you feel like, I like the idea of the M, but the price point is not for me.
Tired of your bare and boring fight stick? Want a look that sets your controller apart? Need an artist to help make that happen? If you want to rep your favorite characters or games on your stick, we can help. From collage style to full custom art, the arcade stick has you covered with options at several price points to help make your custom fight stick dream a reality. To learn more, head on over to thearcadestick.com.
Let's get into an overview of what's included with the M+. Now you do have an accessory bag with an extra switch, which is always nice, and two little nubs, and a switch puller. I've never liked the switch puller included, but we've got one at least. And then you have a right angle USB cable, and then some documentation. Let's kick things off with an overview of the M16 Plus, and I'll also show off the M12 Plus. Anyhow, here's the M16. As you can see, it has a lot of the same features that many Haute42 Cosmox products have. You have these little nub option buttons. In the M series case, it's all clear all the time. And, I think that's a good design choice. If we did black, they'd practically fade in there. Red, I guess red would be fine. I like red and black. It's one of my favorite color combos. You do have the status screen here. And of course, this is the 16 variant, so you have the crazy layout that people either love or hate. I'm a big fan just because I like more buttons, so more things to press. Anyhow, yes, you do have the WASD config. This is great for newbies to leverless. So if you're used to, a computer keyboard, moving it up, down, left, right, you have that configuration until you train your thumb to use this. Otherwise, 8 action buttons, kind of in a standard levelist format. It's not quite Vuelix, not quite Noir. It does have a slight slope, so it feels pretty good to me. I've gotten used to playing on it. And of course, you do have these 3 other buttons. Basically, these are set to L3 and R3 by default, I believe. And then you have a whopping total of 7 option buttons. So you have basically turbo, L3, R3 touchpad, home, select start, and of course you can remap at least some of these. Now I say some of them because L3 and R3 are also tied to the same pins that these guys are. So if you start remapping that, you might have problems when you go back up to touch this. It'll be something else entirely. Anyhow, what else? Yep, this is all metal here. Now the entire controller is not metal. There is a layer here that is acrylic, where the PCB is and such. But I think that adds a nice visual touch. Maybe nice to have like a gold or silver band as an option, but as it is, I like it. Anyhow, there's no acrylic layer here to place artwork, so there is that. I'll talk about more about that in customization. These sides don't really have anything, but up top, you have USB-C connection, of course, and USB-A, of course, the status screen. And on the bottom, 4 built-in little pads, and you do have that common boot cell button access. So if you need to flash, things aren't working, you unplug, use a SIM tool or something to hold that in while you plug back in. Flash nuke and do that. I do have a video on my channel about how to flash to 0.7.8, works for 0.79, and how to do that flatten and reinstall technique. So there's the M16. Let's do a quick overlay of the M12 Plus. And as you can see, this is more of the pure level-less experience. You don't have the up, you don't have the extra buttons, but you have all your option buttons, and pretty much everything is the same LEDs, same switches, same everything. And speaking of switches, we're moving away from using those V2 reds that Haute42 was really fond of, because we're using their crystal switches. Now these are polycarbonate based, and they're a little bit firmer, a little bit stiffer. I kind of like the feel of them. They are linear. And of course they allow for more light transmissibility because they're clear. So there's your quick overview of the M12 and M16 Plus. Let's move on. Let's get some dimensions on the M Plus series. Now lengthwise, we're looking at about 11¾ inches or 297 millimeters. And vertically, we're about 8 inches or 203 millimeters, give or take. And then if we look thickness-wise, it's about ½ an inch, thereabouts, a little more with the buttons, and about 15 millimeters. Let's get a weight on the M Plus, and I anticipate this will be pretty hefty. Yep, 2 pounds, 3.1 ounces. Not obnoxious, but if you're sensitive to weight, then this might be noticeable over a long day. Now, since those numbers don't always give you, what it really kind of compares to, let's just compare some of the other Cosmox controllers. And yes, the M16 is the same size. So you can see that even the T or R series, you have a little bit of size advantage there. So there's that compared to the R16. And let's take a S16, and you can see just how much bigger this bad boy is. It is the biggest controller that Cosmox currently has. And just to compare it also, let's do it to one of its smallest, the B16. You can see just how much bigger it is.
Let's get into the internals for the M series or M Plus series. I'll just point out a couple of the differences. Up top, I mean, it's pretty much the same. Keycaps can be removed. If you need to, you can use like a flathead on your precision screwdriver and get a little more leverage. Just, take it slow, be careful. And underneath, on the M Plus series, it's using these crystal switches, and Cosmox is really leaning into these lately with their newer products. So I'd expect maybe in the future the regular M series will start using them. The regular M series comes default with the Chalk V2 Reds, which are linears. Both these are linear switches. And the advantage of the crystal, it's polycarbonate, so I feel like it's a tiny bit crisper, and it also has much better light transmissibility, so you get more out of those LEDs. All right. Now, if this is stuck really firmly to that bottom, you may have to apply it out just a little bit, then apply a switch puller, and there we go. Now, just to show you the bottom of the crystal switch, you have the big center pin, 3 pins, but this one really doesn't do anything. And the bottom is standard Cosmox fare. We have a single LED, 3 pins for the Chalk V2 setup, and there you go. So let's go ahead and put that back together, and then we'll open it up properly. You have your bottom metal plate here, so let's set that off to the side. And again, I do recommend when you're doing something like this, have a nice soft towel so you don't scratch things up. Then you have your acrylic layer, and you have your PCB layer. Now this looks like it's the same size as the M16 regular size. It is kind of stuck down, so I believe I'd have to ply off all the switches, which I don't think it's going to really get us much. Anyway, we can tour around the board just fine from the opposite side. So here's your boot cell button. We have that little hole there to access it in case you can't seem to get it to come back. You can at least boot it to boot cell, flash nuke it, and then reinstall the base firmware. Here's your RP2040 chip, which is the brains of the operation, and you do see that you have hot swap sockets here for every button, of course. Now, because we don't have the extra buttons of the 16 model, they're actually using the same board, interestingly enough. So I guess it's a cost-saving measure where you just, just make them all the same, and we won't populate like these. So, and that's fine. That's kind of what we expect. Anyhow, otherwise, you can see the bottoms of the LEDs. Here's the ports up top, and there's nothing really much to write home about from there. There's some supports underneath, and one here. So yeah, you're not getting any flexing when you're pressing downward on it. There's your internal construction, and as always, just put it back the way you found it. So line up the acrylic. Might want to give it a quick wipe if you've gotten some dust and dirt in here. I'll get cat hair everywhere, I'm sure. And I'm going to show you something in a minute if for some reason you take this apart. So one quick tip, and I pretty much say this in all the videos where I'm disassembling and reassembling things, if we have this screw pattern, is once you've got everything lined up, I highly recommend you work in an X pattern. So start in one corner, and again, using that T6. Don't over torque things. You don't need to. Just make it decently tight. And then go to the other corner like so. And then, of course, come up here, then here. And the others, I mean, you can kind of work 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 if you want. There's no real order there, but make sure you start these 4 off in that X pattern, just because if you get something misaligned, the X pattern kind of exposes that pretty quickly. So that's just a quick tip. If you, for some reason, do decide to take this apart, I always recommend the X pattern for putting it back together.
Welcome to the lab, and let's do the usual basic acceptance testing. I'm going to do some slide and pressure testing first, just to see if we have any weak points here. And of course, yeah, it's pretty strong. Unless I was some world champion hand strength person, I don't think I'd be bending this too soon. So yeah, definitely
You are paying the premium price, you're getting the premium feel there, so that's good. Now as far as slide testing, this is with the built-in nubs, and you know, it's pretty good. Let's try it without the foam. I expect it'll be better, of course. Yeah, definitely so. Does a decent job. Now, of course, I probably mentioned it, that bare metal feel on exposed legs can feel a little bit cold sometimes, so just be mindful of that. Let's just do some noise testing. I've turned off every noise reduction in here so you can hear how these switches sound. Something new for 2025 is I'm doing input lag testing to see how fast these controllers are. So I'm using GPDL to accomplish that. You can see this little Arduino guy in a 3D printed case, just connected directly into the button socket. And here's the results for the M+. I'll compare it against its little brother here in a second. 1, 2, and 3 milliseconds. So most of your results are going to be in here, of course. But the minimum it's measuring was 1.13 milliseconds, average of 1.43 milliseconds, and a maximum of 2.77 milliseconds. Now I can't get polling because it requires an analog stick to test that, and well, none of that here. It was tested on Windows 11, latest firmware. So if we compare that against the M16 Non-Plus, it's, yeah, identical. I would say this 2.79 versus 2.77 max is margin of error. They're both tested on the same machine, so yeah, very comparable results. All right, let's do some quick in-game testing with the M+. So let's just try some quick movement, buttons. Mashing feels really smooth if you want to just do this waggle method. All right, we don't need to see the end of that. Tappy motions are good. It was a little slow there, but no problem. That was a little too much. All right. All right, something a little saucy, I guess. Nothing too impressive, but you know, there you go. Okay, let's try. Yep, that feels good. So yeah, I think things are pretty responsive. These aren't too hard to reach, though I kind of have to take my thumb off jump if I need to use this, which generally for Street Fighter 6 is fine, because you know, if I assign this to Drive Impact or Drive Rush or whatnot, it's I have to not be jumping anyway. So that works just fine. All right, let's move on. Next up, let's get into a quick Steam Deck check. Now I do like to set this up in a ultra compact, or at least as compact as possible arrangement, and I'll give you some dimensions on that just in case you run into a situation where you're looking to play in a very tight space and you wonder, can I do it with the M+ series? Well, you're about to find out. Anyhow, just want to demonstrate that, yep, it works in the OS, as you can see. So you can move around in that with the controller just fine. And I do recommend X input mode. D input mode will work as well. And I'm using this right angle cable to a USB little micro hub here that converts it to an A port. You can, if you have a C to C cable, you can use that absolutely. Now my little port here, so this wire is just for charging. So I'm giving it power while I'm doing this in that hub as well. That's why it's there. Anyhow, just to show you that, yeah, it works in game, let's go ahead and level one up. And while we're doing that, let's talk about the measurements. Now, the M Plus is a tiny bit wider than the Steam Deck at about 11 3/4 inches, or about 297-ish millimeters.
Now, front to back is usually your real concern, especially when they're about the same size. And that's measuring about 11.5 inches or about 290 millimeters. So almost square, really. Let's go ahead and launch the game. And as you can see, yep, we're moving around just fine, just as I expected. So we're passing the Steam Deck check. Once again, if you need that converter because you're going to be using the included cable, just remember you need, a little hub like I've got here or something like this that will change your USB-A to a C port to work with the Steam Deck. That's all.
Up next, let's do a web review for the M+. I just like to do this to see, where is it landing in search results so you can easily find it if you need to look for documentation or support, etc. So let's try this out. And we get Cosmox for the first result. Not bad. It's kind of here, but it's also right here, just a direct link. And it's kind of the Cosmox standard layout for their sites now. We still have this crystal low profile switch typo. That can be fixed, it's not a big deal. One thing that gets me is, again, that lists PlayStation 4 compatibility, and I feel like that needs an asterisk just because you don't get that quite out of the box. But otherwise, things are fine here. I don't really have a complaint, but if we go up to support, so this is a little Englishy here, just about, join the Discord. This is behind a version. And I do wish there was more documentation here in the FAQs, like how do I switch SOCD mode? It tells you which input mode should I use, but not how to change it necessarily, which would be nice to have. So let's check. If I go under products and I check for the M+, we do have a manual, so that's nice. And it does have mixed language stuff. I kind of wish there was different language versions here available just so it's easier to read, but it's here. So it's reasonably quick. It's something you can save to your phone if you want to know, hey, how do I do whichever shortcuts for RGB or SOCD. At least there's something in that regard. I do wish they had art templates here. For those of you who want to cut vinyl, yeah, this doesn't have an acrylic layer, but you could always cut a vinyl to apply. But otherwise, it's kind of the standard Cosmox web experience. It's not bad. There's a few things I would just clean up, and everything's fine otherwise.
Now that we're back from the lab, let's talk about what I liked, what can we improve upon, and just some, maybe mid things about the M series. Now I'm going to be showing the M12 here, but a lot of the stuff also applies to the M16. So let's get started. Let's get into build and build quality, and yeah, that's the first thing I wanted to look at because of the very premium metal body. Now, again, this thing is really, really durable. I mean, I'm not flexing it there at all, and unless I'm like in World Strongman, I'm not bending this either, so I'm not going to try too hard to bend it, but yeah, it's just not happening. So this thing should be able to take a beating and still keep on ticking. All right, so as far as buttons go, you do have the crystal switches on the M+, you have the red switches on the M regular. The crystal switches are nice because they'll let more light through, and the red switches are kind of bone stock. I'm never thrilled about using them. I like to upgrade those as fast as I can. Crystal switches are a step better. They're a little bit just crisper, and again, they have better light transmissibility, so that's nice. Of course, you also have kind of the usual Cosmox nubby buttons for options, and they're serviceable. I mean, if you have some game that requires you to rapid fire start, there's something wrong, but they're not the best for that, that's all. Usually not an issue, and the nice thing is they're sufficiently out of the way that I don't worry about pressing them on either the M or the M+, so that's very nice. So some things I want to wish list include, I have the Light Fox here, and if you'll notice, it has this lovely little hook. It's just very low profile, and it's great because I can plug in and wrap a Velcro wrap around, and now if I try and pull on the cable, it doesn't immediately pull out that very easy to pull on USB-C port. Instead of disconnecting me, it just redistributes the stress here. So I think a hook on either side would be great. And if even if you don't use it for that stress relief purpose, you can hook a dual lanyard or some strap so that you can carry this around. I just feel like that would be a subtle but nice improvement. Now, again, that's a wish list item, and I know other people might say, well, I like the really smooth edge here, and yeah, again, it's a wish list item for me. Another thing that is kind of a wish list item, and maybe this is available already on Focus Attack, or it will be, is having a foam pad here or rubber pad here. Again, I'm spoiled by the Lightfox. This is nice and smooth, and the thing is, when you put this on your lap, especially if you have any exposed leg skin, it immediately feels very cold because it's metal, and it just kind of defaults to doing that unless you shoved it in the heat somewhere. I don't know. It just is like, okay, I know I need to warm this up a little bit. But having a rubber or other pad on here would really go a long way to alleviating that. Something else I've noticed, less so on my silver model, but on this M12, I'm not sure what I did, but I've just put little scratches here, here, and here, I've noticed. Maybe it's just a black model fault, I'm not sure. But unfortunately, they have picked up these little scratches. I could probably get something to cover them up a little bit, but yeah, just be careful with anything sharp or stuff like that around your M Plus or M series. So if you've seen my other Cosmox review or seen their other products, they sort of have a very similar feature set, which is not bad. We're basing things on GB2040 as the brains, very fast, very flexible, very powerful. And you got the status screen, we have LED lit keys, we have a full suite of option buttons, more so even compared to others, and I'll talk about that in a minute. You have the pass-through, you have on, say, the M16, the extra buttons here, and yeah, so you have these kind of the standard Cosmox set of options, which is not, again, a bad thing. They're really good features. I like them. But I do want to talk about some particulars with it. One of the more common questions I see when it comes to especially the 16 button variants is this tournament legal? And my answer, my short one, is check with your tournament rules. There's just no excuse for not looking those up, or at least reaching out to the specific TO for the games you're going to be playing. I find that Arc System Works is probably a little bit more lenient than, say, CPT. I mean, look at Ankle Gator. Anyhow, there are some issues with the 16 variants on the M series specifically that might give you pause. Now, you already had these two buttons being L3, and also this being up and up, which I know the ups you can't necessarily remap because they're on the same pin, or they should be. The L3s, I think these are on different pins. However, because we have the L3 also up here, and that is bound to the same pin as at least one of these, yeah, that means you pretty much have to remove those extra L3s there, and you can't use them, unfortunately, if your tournament bans that sort of thing. Same thing with R3. You can't disable the one that's up here and not disable this one. You can software disable it, and I'm sure if you showed your TO, hey, I'm pressing a button, it does nothing on the screen, does nothing in button check here, you're good to go. So you don't necessarily have to pull it and worry about the switch, etc. Just make sure you do that in web config before you hit that tournament. And again, that's only if you have that concern. Otherwise, just leave them mapped how they are. But that does call upon one thing you need to be careful about. So if you try and remap the L3, R3 up here, whichever ones they are, I think this is touchpad, Yeah, that'll mean these tend to map to something else as well because I think they're mapped to the same pin. So be mindful of that. Usually I like mapping my option buttons a certain way in GP2040 just so my head is always clear as to what they are, but with the M series I can't really do that as much. One last thing in features and performance is because we're using all of the large buttons, if you have small hands like me, I found that trying to do a DP to the left is a little bit difficult. My ring finger just doesn't want to cooperate. I have tried using the squeeze things to, muff it up, strengthen it up, but I haven't gotten there yet. Maybe it's just me. I need to practice a million more times to really get in my head. I don't know. Especially when I'm playing Vampire Savior and I want to block and then immediately guard cancel. It's just hard for me to hit, especially because, if I'm doing a regular DP to the left, I can switch over my fingers. But if I need to block first and then do that, it's a lot tougher for me. So, yeah, if you have larger fingers, I think you'll find this fits you just fine. It's again for us with smaller hands that this might be an issue. Up next is customization, and you might think there's not a lot of options, and you're kind of right. Let's start with what you can change, though. So the caps, as you've seen on my M16, you can definitely change. Cosmox now has their own caps in a variety of colors, both translucent and not, available at both AliExpress and Amazon, and I think some other places for other international places, but those are the two I've mostly seen them on. In AliExpress, you might be looking at $8 to $10 before shipping, and Amazon, you're looking at about 18 to 20. So they are kind of pricey versus, say, the OC Punk stovetop button caps that I used on the M16. Now that said, at least that gives you some customization. I do wish that out of the gate you could just have, all smoke, all white. I know there's a few variants of the M16 that have, like all clear / white, though I'd like to see maybe all red or all whatever. So at least you have that option, right? However, the other thing you can change is the switches underneath, and these are again Shock V2s. They're big fans of those. I like them. In the past, there were not a lot of options, but that is changing rapidly. Sure, there's not as many options as MX compatible. How would you? There's pretty much thousands and hundreds seem to come out every day. However, there are much more options now, and a lot of good options, like the low freeze or the other palm switches that are out there. I really like those a lot. The only gotcha there is if you put those in and you have these opaque caps, you're basically getting no LED action, unfortunately. So, boo, but if you replace the caps, you'll kind of alleviate that. The included crystals are nice. They have really great light transmissibility, as you'd expect, so you can actually see some of the light. However, I still like the palms a lot better. And Cosmox does have the wind engine switch, so if you like the linear feel and you like that smooth feel, then that might be something to look at as well. All right, let's talk about what you cannot customize, or maybe not as well. So this is kind of why I've stuck to a T series or R series for my main controller, in that, yeah, I can put a bunch of stickers on, as you've seen. However, it's not perhaps as classy as an art insert. It's not as flexible as an art insert. You could do vinyl if you're very careful. I'm not, especially. I feel like I'd get a vinyl press or stick on or whatever and ruin it instantly, but that's my clumsy fingers. The other option you have is laser etching, especially on the Black series here. Should work pretty well. But I'm always loath to commit to one thing and not be able to reverse it. So that's me. If you're fine with whatever you're going to etch, then that's pretty much set permanently. Otherwise, yeah, there's not a lot of art options here. Up next, let's talk about portability and size. Now, I really like the size of the Plus series, but the size of the M series is not bad either. It straddles that fine line between being lap playable very comfortably and being, really ultra portable pretty well. It's like a bridge between, say, the S or the G series to, M, R, and T. But as far as big boy sizes, the M, R, and T, yep, this is the biggest one they have. Has plenty of wrist space if you like to raise your hands there. And yet it's still very thin, and it fits right inside this 13-inch padded laptop case. And I got this from Daiso, very inexpensive. So if you have one of those in your area, they may still have them in stock or something similar. Now, if you're very sensitive to weight or size, you need to play on an airline or train or whatever, you need something absolutely a lot smaller, definitely look at the M series size or something smaller. But for everyday playing, for playing on the lap, then yeah, I want this. Next up is documentation and a few other miscellaneous items. I thought the included printed documentation was fine. The website is generally fine, though I'd like to see the art template on there. And also, while we're at it, I'd like to see all the Haute42 stuff moved over to Cosmox and just unify the brand already. We're still stuck on some of the Haute42, and yeah, I know that has recognition, but just, keep the old website and make it point over to Cosmox Gaming or whatever it is now and just be done with it. Also, in that vein, let's start naming, instead of just having the kind of letter, number, moniker, I'd like to see, use something Cosmos related, like Sagittarius, Regulus, Antares, whatever, they're all free for the taking, so start giving them at least that name so people can say, oh, my Cosmox Antares, I'm having trouble getting the LEDs to do whatever, such and so forth. And still, you can include that, model number in there somewhere. One thing I would like to see is Cosmox versus other brands that are more established, like Hori or PXN, or even, they all have model numbers and serial numbers printed on the bottom, whereas on here it's just smooth nothing, so there's no real indication who made this. So it would be nice to have that printed here. I know other models have it, but it's not here at all on here, which is fine up top. I wouldn't want it there. I want it on the bottom, just printed there, so maybe a scan code for where to go for support, and so on. Right, let's wrap things up by talking about value. And again, that's a balance of price to features. And once again, I feel like Cosmox gets it pretty right with, the pricing target versus how many features you get. Now, sure, say I could go and get the T series for less, and I get a lot of the same features, but I don't get the same premium build quality materials. So there is that real consideration. That's probably the real difference, is I want a solid metal body that I can beat up, I can play on anytime, etc., etc. That's what's really causing the price increase versus, say, the T or R series. And if you're someone that just likes bare metal, you're not planning on customizing too much, the M series or the M Plus series might be for you, and it might be worth that extra cost. Let's cap off this review by asking, is the M series or M Plus series worth your time, your consideration, and your money? And obviously, I went out and bought that M16 day one, like I mentioned before in this review. So obviously, I thought it was worth all those things. But I'm going to say that, yeah, they are. The feature set, the construction, they all feel really great. Yes, these are more expensive products that Cosmox offers, but I feel like, yeah, they're probably worth the money because they just feel like they're built so well. Now, obviously, the M Plus series, for those of you who want to play the lap for really extended periods, you don't mind the heft and the weight in your lap. I quite enjoy that, really, just, to have something that's bigger and, I can just set it and forget it, right? It feels great there. Now, sure, I do want that pad there or something to go underneath so that I don't get that initial shock of the cold metal on my legs, but that just passes within a few minutes and I'm good. So that said, yeah, I think these are really great. Obviously, again, if you are big into customization, you want graphics on all sides of your stick, yeah, this is probably not going to do it for you. Sure, you could do stickers like I've done. Obviously, you've seen on the M16, or you can change the caps, sure, but obviously not as much customization as other models, other Cosmox models, even with art inserts, etc. I just can't get away with that. Sure, you could do laser etching if that's available to you, but again, that's something you cannot change later, right? But that being said, if you just want a flat, clean look, the M series might be for you. Hey everyone, you know what time it is. I've got a kitty, so it's time to ask for your likes, your comments, and subscriptions. If you found the content useful, informative, helped you make a buying decision, or you just like Ellie here, leave that like. She will appreciate it. If you have questions, you like the content, you like a specific section, leave those comments down below. And finally, if you want to see more content, then you know what to do. Hit that subscribe button, hit that bell. You've done the YouTube refrain, so just reminding you. Thanks a lot, and Ellie says hi.
The arcade stick.